I swear to you, the audacity entered the room before she did. That morning had been flawless in the quiet, fragile way mornings earn after chaos. I was standing barefoot on my Malibu deck, toes pressed against weather-warmed wood, a ceramic mug of coffee resting between my palms like a reward I'd worked years to deserve. The ocean stretched endlessly in front of me, waves rolling in and out with that calm confidence nature has when it knows it owns the place. No urgency, no noise, no one needing anything from me, just peace. The kind of peace you don't stumble into, you fight for it. Divorce finalized, lawyers paid, bills organized, emotional debris cleared away piece by piece, silence reclaimed and protected like sacred ground. This house wasn't just where I lived, it was where I finally exhaled. I remember thinking, this is it. This is what stability feels like. And then bam, a car door slammed so hard it rattled the glass behind me. Not a gentle arrival. Not a respectful pull-in and park. Not a hey mom, we're here. No, this was aggressive, intentional, loud enough to announce itself. My shoulders stiffened instinctively, coffee sloshing slightly over the rim. I didn't turn around, I didn't need to. Something deep in my chest tightened, the kind of warning you only get when peace is about to be trespassed. A second later, I heard it, heavy footsteps, fast, sharp, angry. They climbed the wooden stairs like someone storming into a courtroom, already convinced they were right. No hesitation, no uncertainty, just momentum. Then my front door opened. No knock, no pause. No are you home, just entitlement swinging on its hinges. Mom, we're here. That one word landed heavier than anything else. I finally turned around. There she was, my daughter Sophia, 28 years old. Jaw clenched tight enough to hurt, sunglasses still on, even inside my house like she was staging an entrance instead of greeting her mother. She looked rehearsed, armed, ready, and behind her stood a man I'd never seen before, tall. Well-dressed, expensive shirt, clean haircut that screamed intention. And that smile, the one men wear when they believe charm is a universal currency. Between them sat three massive suitcases, wheels clicking against my hardwood floor as if they already knew where they belonged. I blinked once, twice. Here for what exactly? I asked, my voice steady despite the warning bells ringing everywhere inside me. Sophia didn't answer. She was already dragging one of the suitcases toward the staircase, like instinct. Like memory, like she'd done this before, that's when it hit me. She wasn't visiting, she was moving in, and no one had thought to ask me. The man behind her stepped forward, cleared his throat, and extended his hand. Mrs. Whitmore. I'm Derek, it's wonderful to finally meet you. His grip was firm, confident, too confident for a man standing uninvited in someone else's home. Sophia finally turned around, casual as ever. Oh yeah, Mom, this is Derek. My husband, the word husband echoed louder than the ocean behind me. You're what? I smiled, polite, controlled. The kind of smile women master when they know anger will be weaponized against them later. Congratulations, I said evenly. When were you planning on telling me? Sophia shrugged, like marriage announcements were optional updates. We wanted to surprise you. Surprise. I glanced at Derek again, the watch, the posture. The way his eyes weren't on me, they were scanning the house. The windows, the open layout, the ocean-facing deck, running numbers, measuring, calculating. And that's when the thought crossed my mind, sharp and unwelcome, but impossible to ignore. This man wasn't looking at me, he was looking at my house. At that moment, every instinct told me to say it, to draw the line, to protect my peace. I should have told them to leave, but I didn't. And that hesitation, the single, quiet decision to stay polite, nearly cost me everything. Because what Sophia said next didn't just change the visit, it turned my home into a negotiation table. So yeah, Sophia said, tossing her sunglasses onto my kitchen counter like she owned the surface beneath them, we're on our honeymoon. The words just sat there, floating, unclaimed, waiting for me to react. I stood across from her, still holding my coffee, steam curling upward like it was trying to escape the situation before I could. Derek leaned casually against the doorway, arms crossed, smiling like this was all perfectly reasonable. Like he hadn't just walked into a stranger's home with luggage and expectations. I blinked slowly, buying myself time. Honeymoon, I repeated. That's nice. I waited. She waited. Derek smiled wider. The silence stretched, awkward and deliberate, until I finally asked the only logical question left. And where exactly are you staying? Sophia didn't even look at me. She gestured around the room, my living room. The yoga mat rolled neatly by the window, the paintbrushes soaking in an old ceramic mug by the sink, my book face down on the couch where I'd left it the night before. Here, she said, obviously, obviously. Like my home had been silently upgraded to communal property without so much as a conversation. Like the walls had somehow signed off on this without consulting me. Before I could respond, Derek stepped in smooth, practiced, clearly used to filling uncomfortable gaps. We wanted something quiet, he said. Private. Hotels just feel so cold, you know? I stared at him. No, Derek, I don't know. Because when I want peace, I don't show up unannounced and insert myself into someone else's life. but again, I didn't say that. I took a breath, slow, controlled. How long were you thinking of staying? I asked. Sophia smiled. It was subtle. Quick, the kind of smile that lies before the words even arrive. Just a few days. Derek's jaw tightened, just barely. Maybe a week, Sophia corrected, glancing at him like they'd rehearsed this part but disagreed on the timing. Then she leaned in closer, lowering her voice like she was offering me a gift instead of an imposition. You always said life is about embracing the unexpected, Mom. I did say that when she was 16. When she was figuring herself out. When unexpected meant changing plans, not rearranging my entire life. Not when she was 28, married to a man I'd just met, and unpacking her future into the home I fought to keep. I showed them to the guest room upstairs, carrying nothing, saying little. I watched Derek carefully as we walked the hallway, the way his eyes traced the clean lines of the architecture, the windows, the ocean view at the end of the corridor. Those weren't curious eyes, they were assessment eyes. This place is incredible, he said. You must be sitting on a gold mine. Gold mine, the word landed heavy. Not home, not beautiful, not peaceful, gold mine. That afternoon, they went for a walk on the beach, hand in hand, laughing like a couple on vacation. And I did what mothers always do when they're uncomfortable. I cleaned, I organized, I made space where none should have been required. I told myself this was temporary, that they'd leave, that this was just a visit wrapped in poor communication. But by dinner, the mask slipped. Derek stepped outside to take a phone call. Sophia poured herself a glass of my good wine, the bottle I saved for special occasions, without asking. She settled onto my couch like she'd earned it. Mom, she said casually, we need to talk. My stomach tightened. I figured, I replied. She swirled the wine slowly, watching the liquid cling to the glass. We're not just here for vacation. I nodded. I assumed as much. Her smile widened, too calm, too prepared. We think it might be time for you to consider your living situation. There it was, the real agenda. You're alone out here, she continued. What if something happens? Derek thinks, and I agree, that a condo closer to town would be safer for you. Safer, smaller, more manageable, easier to sell, easier to control. Sell the house, free up the asset, let the new husband handle the logistics. And suddenly everything clicked. The timing, the surprise marriage, the luggage, the goldmine comment. They weren't here to celebrate love. They were here to reposition assets. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, and realized I wasn't just being visited. I was being managed, and the next morning they crossed a line so bold, so personal, it changed everything. The next morning arrived quietly, too quietly for what was waiting beneath it. I was already awake, standing in my kitchen as the first gray light crept through the windows. The ocean was barely visible, just a dark stretch beyond the glass, breathing in slow, steady waves. I cracked eggs into a bowl, the sound sharp in the stillness, and tried to ground myself in the routine. Cooking had always been my reset. Chop, stir, breathe, control what you can. Sophia entered without greeting me. She slid onto a bar stool, phone already in hand, thumbs moving like nothing in the world required her attention more than a glowing screen. Mom, she said casually, not looking up, we need to set some expectations. Expectations. The word scraped against me. I reached over and turned the heat down on the stove, the quiet sizzle lowering with it. About what? I asked. Derek was already seated at my kitchen counter, tablet open, financial news scrolling. Coffee mug placed exactly where he wanted it. He looked like he belonged there, like my kitchen had been rebranded into his morning office. Well, Sophia continued, finally glancing up, Derek has a very specific routine. Derek nodded. Slowly, proudly, he wakes up early, she said. He likes structure, discipline, nutrition. I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. And, Sophia straightened, as if delivering instructions instead of crossing a boundary. So we were thinking breakfast should be ready by 5 every morning. 5, not 6, not 7, 5, I laughed. A real laugh at first, sharp, surprised, because surely she had misspoken. Then I looked at her face, she was serious. Derek leaned forward slightly, elbows resting on my counter like he was closing a deal. Strong coffee, he added. No sugar, eggs Benedict would be great, or fruit, something clean. Eggs Benedict, at 5 in the morning, prepared by me. In my house, I looked at my daughter, searching for something, recognition, embarrassment, humor, but found none. You want me to wake up at 4, I said slowly, to cook breakfast for your husband? Sophia frowned, irritation flashing across her face. Why are you making this weird? She asked. You're always up early anyway, and you love cooking. Love cooking, like it was a character trait, like it meant obligation. Derek smiled, wide, polished, condescending. We'd really appreciate it, Mrs. Whitmore, he said, as the host, the word burned deeper than anything else, because in that moment I understood something with perfect clarity. They didn't see a mother standing in her own kitchen. They saw staff, support, infrastructure, a resource, and suddenly the house wasn't a home anymore. It was a system they expected me to maintain for them. The old version of me, the one who apologized, adjusted, absorbed, she stirred for a moment. Habit is a powerful thing. Decades of motherhood train you to smooth edges, to keep the peace at your own expense. But I'd already lost too much peace to lose it again. I took a breath, then another, and I nodded. Of course, I said softly. Sweetly, I'll have everything ready. Sophia's shoulders relaxed instantly. Derek leaned back, satisfied. They thought the conversation was over. They thought compliance meant weakness. They thought they'd won. What they didn't understand, what neither of them could see, was that agreeing wasn't surrender. It was strategy. Because that night, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling as the sound of the ocean rolled in and out beyond my window, I made a decision. If they wanted structure, I would give them structure. If they wanted routine, I would give them routine. And at exactly 4 o'clock a.m. the next morning, I set my alarm not to cook, but to set a trap they would never forget. Because the breakfast they expected was not the one they were about to get. I smiled when I said yes, and that right there was the part they completely missed, because when someone disrespects you openly and you push back, they're ready for it. They expect resistance. They brace themselves for arguments, emotional speeches, guilt trips, and negotiations. They come armed with excuses and justifications. Conflict, they can manage that. But when you agree too quickly, when you don't hesitate, when you don't argue, that's what unsettles people like them. Sophia leaned in and kissed my cheek like we'd just closed a business deal. "You're the best, Mom," she said warmly. I knew you'd understand. Understand. I almost laughed because I understood perfectly. I understood that this wasn't about breakfast, it wasn't about routine, and it certainly wasn't about hospitality. It was about testing boundaries. That night I didn't sleep much, but not because I was anxious or upset. My mind was sharp, alert, awake in a way it hadn't been in years. I lay in bed listening to the ocean rise and fall outside my window, replaying everything like security footage. The way Derek's eyes scanned my house when he thought no one was watching. The way Sophia spoke about my living situation like it was a problem to be solved. The way Derek said host as if I were part of the furnishings. Men like Derek don't enter situations to support. They enter to establish control, and control never arrives all at once. First, they take space. Then they take time. Then, once you're tired and off balance, they take money. I thought about how easily my daughter had slipped into treating me like background noise in my own life. How natural it seemed to her now. That realization hurt more than Derek ever could. At exactly 3:58 a.m., my alarm went off. No snooze, no second thought. I swung my legs over the side of the bed and stood up, moving quietly through the dark house. I slipped on my robe and walked into the kitchen as if this were just another peaceful Malibu morning. Except it wasn't. This wasn't habit. This was strategy. This was chess. And Derek, poor Derek, thought he was playing checkers. I started with the coffee, fresh beans, carefully measured, ground strong, exactly the way he liked it. I cracked the eggs slowly, deliberately, the sound echoing in the still kitchen. Toasted bread, heated sauce, every movement calm, precise. Muscle memory kicked in, the reflexes of a woman who had spent decades taking care of others. But this time was different. This time I wasn't serving. I was setting the tone. I plated the food beautifully, my best china. Linen napkins folded just right. Everything arranged with intention, like a photograph meant to communicate something without words. At 4:47 a.m., I heard footsteps upstairs, right on schedule. Derek appeared in the doorway wearing a silk robe, posture relaxed, confidence already settling into his shoulders like this house belonged to him now. He stopped short when he saw the counter. Actually stopped. "Wow," he said, impressed. "You actually did it," as if there had ever been a question. I met his eyes calmly. I said I would. He sat down immediately, relaxed. Entitlement has that effect. It assumes compliance equals submission. He inhaled deeply as I poured the coffee. "This is perfect," he said, lifting the cup. I smiled back, because what he didn't know, what men like him never realize, is that perfect is sometimes the most dangerous thing of all. Because perfect lowers your guard, perfect makes you comfortable, and comfort is when people stop paying attention. And the moment Derek took that first sip, the countdown began. Derek ate the way men eat when they've never had to wonder where their next comfort is coming from. Slow, unhurried, certain. He cut into the eggs like the morning owed him that moment, took his time chewing. Sipped his coffee with approval, eyes half closed, like he was evaluating a service he expected to receive again tomorrow. "You're really good at this," he said casually, glancing up at me. "Sophia was right, you have a gift, a gift. Not thank you, not this is generous, a gift, like it was something innate in me to serve." Sophia wandered into the kitchen halfway through his meal, hair messy, oversized shirt slipping off one shoulder, phone already in her hand like an extension of her body. "Oh wow," she said, stopping short. "You actually made eggs Benedict." Actually, that word again, like I'd surprised them by knowing my place. She poured herself coffee without asking and slid onto a stool, scrolling while she drank. "This is why I told Derek you'd be perfect for this arrangement," she added, not looking up. "You really thrive when you're taking care of people." Arrangement. I felt the words settle in my chest, heavy and cold. I said nothing. Sometimes silence does more damage than confrontation. Derek finished his plate, wiped his mouth with the napkin, and stood up like a man whose morning was right on schedule. I've got calls, he said. I'm going to shower first. Calls. Important ones, apparently. He walked upstairs like my home had already reorganized itself around his calendar. About 45 minutes later, I heard footsteps again. Fast ones, then slower, then fast again, uneven this time. Derek's voice echoed from upstairs, just loud enough to reach the kitchen. Sophia, yeah, she called back. Where's the bathroom? Hallway, first door on the right. A pause, then quieter. Is there another one? I leaned back against the counter, arms crossed. Sophia frowned, phone lowering slightly. Why? No reason. A few minutes passed, then hurried footsteps again. A door slammed. Silence. Then it happened again. By the third trip, Sophia was standing now, her phone forgotten on the counter. He never gets sick, she muttered, more to herself than to me. Like ever, I kept my tone calm, neutral, almost comforting. Food poisoning can be sudden, I said, but we ate the same thing yesterday. Yes, I replied, and everyone reacts differently. That's when Derek's voice floated down the stairs again, but this time it wasn't confident, it was tight. Strained, Mrs. Whitmore, he called, concern wrapped around every syllable. Yes, do you have anything for stomach issues? I turned slowly toward the medicine cabinet. You'll find something in there. He barely made it back upstairs. The fourth trip came quicker. By the fifth, there was no dignity left, no charm, no smooth smile, no silk robe confidence, just panic, the kind you can't hide once your body betrays you. Sophia paced the kitchen now, running a hand through her hair, anxiety replacing entitlement. This doesn't make sense, she said. He's always so careful. He never eats anything questionable. I raised an eyebrow. Sometimes the body reacts to stress or unfamiliar environments. She stopped pacing, looked at me. Do you think we should take him to urgent care? If you think that's best, I said gently. Derek appeared at the top of the stairs again, gripping the railing, face pale, skin damp, eyes wild and unfocused. I need to sit, he said. The man who had walked into my house like a king now looked like someone who had lost control of the ground beneath him. And that's when I knew the shift had happened, not because I raised my voice, not because I confronted him, not because I demanded respect, but because people like Derek depend on predictability. They thrive when they control the rhythm. When they set expectations, when others respond the way they expect them to, and the moment something doesn't go according to plan, the moment the script breaks, their confidence evaporates. Sophia hovered beside him now, fear replacing certainty. Let's go, she said. We're going to urgent care. I stepped aside as they gathered their things, Derek hunched over, moving slowly, every step careful. The front door closed behind them with none of the drama of their arrival. No slam, just retreat. The house went quiet again, and in that silence I felt something I hadn't felt since they arrived: control. Because Derek still thought this was an accident, and he had no idea this was only the beginning. They left for urgent care just before noon. Derek was folded into the passenger seat like a man twice his age, one arm wrapped around his stomach, the other braced against the door as if the car itself might betray him next. His face had lost all color, no confidence, no charm, no silk robe superiority, just sweat and fear. Sophia didn't look at me as she backed out of the driveway, not once. The tires rolled away, and with them went the tension that had been suffocating my house since their arrival. The door closed. Silence followed, real silence, not the kind that feels lonely, but the kind that settles, slow and deep, like a held breath finally released. I stood there for a moment, listening to the ocean again. Same waves, same rhythm, but something inside me had shifted permanently. This time I wasn't reacting, I was thinking. I walked into the kitchen, poured myself a fresh cup of coffee, and opened my laptop at the dining table. Sunlight filtered in through the windows, casting long shadows across the floor. Everything felt sharper now, clearer. I typed Derek's name into the search bar, nothing unusual at first, then I added keywords: business, development, investment. That's when the cracks began to show. LLCs registered and dissolved within short timeframes. Projects listed as pending for years with no completion dates. A development company attached to his name marked as in foreclosure. Interesting. I leaned back in my chair, folding my arms. This wasn't bad luck. This was a pattern. I refined the search, dug deeper, cross-referenced addresses, names, timelines. That's when I found her. Jennifer Walsh, his ex-wife, former owner of a small but successful catering business. Well-reviewed, community-loved. The kind of business that grows slowly and honestly, then suddenly sold. No explanation, no expansion, just gone. Divorce finalized weeks later. My stomach tightened. I clicked through more records, more breadcrumbs. And then I found the article: small, local, easy to miss if you weren't looking for it. Elderly homeowners, promises of monthly income, investment opportunity, retirement security. The company never paid. The name at the bottom of the article stopped me cold. Castellano Holdings, Derek's company. I closed the laptop slowly and stared out at the ocean. This wasn't arrogance. This wasn't entitlement. This was predation. Sophia hadn't married a provider. She had married a man with a system, a strategy, a history of finding people with assets, trust, and emotional leverage, and slowly repositioning everything until it benefited him. And suddenly her behavior made sense. The rush, the pressure, the talk of downsizing, the concern disguised as care. She wasn't protecting me. She was being used to access me. When they returned later that afternoon, the house felt different. Smaller somehow, tighter. Derek shuffled in first, eyes hollow, movements slow. Urgent care diagnosis, severe food poisoning. Sophia hovered over him like a worried nurse, fussing with pillows, whispering reassurances, casting occasional glances in my direction like she didn't know where I stood anymore. He needs rest, she said quietly. The doctor said hydration and no stress. Of course, I replied evenly. He should take it easy. That night, after they finally went upstairs, I returned to the deck. The ocean stretched endlessly in front of me, moonlight glinting off the water just like it had the morning everything began. Same house, same view, different woman. Derek thought breakfast was about routine. He thought it was about control. But breakfast had only been the test, and he had failed it because now I knew who he was, and more importantly, I knew how men like him operate. They talk when they think they're safe. They reveal things when they believe they're winning. They confess without realizing it, one casual comment at a time. Tomorrow, I wouldn't confront him. I wouldn't accuse him. I would let him talk, because the most dangerous thing you can do to a man like Derek is give him the illusion that he's still in control. The next morning, Derek came downstairs slower, careful, like a man who no longer trusted his own body or his environment. Gone was the silk robe, gone was the tablet, gone was the posture that said he ran the room. Instead, he wore a hoodie and sweatpants, shoulders slightly hunched, movements measured, as if every step required permission from his stomach. No confidence. That alone told me everything I needed to know. Men like Derek believe control lives inside routine, inside predictability, inside knowing what happens next. Once that routine cracks, once the body betrays them, they panic, quietly at first, internally, but it shows. I stood at the counter pouring hot water over tea leaves, letting the steam rise slowly between us like a curtain. "How are you feeling?" I asked gently, as if yesterday hadn't dismantled him. "Better," he said cautiously. "Still off? I'm glad," I replied. "Being sick away from home is the worst." Home. I watched him closely. He didn't correct me. He just nodded and sat down at the counter, eyes drifting around the kitchen again, but this time the look had changed. Yesterday, his eyes had claimed the space. Today, they measured it. Calculation had replaced entitlement. After a moment, he cleared his throat. "Mrs. Whitmore," he said carefully, "I was hoping we could continue the conversation we started earlier this week. Of course you were." Men like Derek don't retreat, they regroup. "I've been thinking a lot," I said, sitting across from him with my tea. "Yesterday really opened my eyes." Sophia appeared in the doorway then, coffee in hand, hair pulled back, relief already forming on her face. "Yes," she said quickly. "See, I told you she'd come around." Derek smiled at her, but it wasn't smug anymore, it was hungry. "You see," Derek continued, leaning forward slightly, "situations like yesterday really highlight why strong support systems matter. Especially at your stage of life." There it was, stage of life, a phrase designed to sound neutral but meant to shrink you. Translation, you're old enough to frighten, young enough to exploit. I wrapped my hands around the warm mug. "I wouldn't want to be a burden," I said softly. Sophia nodded immediately, too quickly. "Exactly," she said. "That's what I've been trying to say." Derek seized the opening. "That's actually what I do," he explained. "I help people transition into safer, more sustainable lifestyles. I specialize in guiding seniors through these kinds of decisions." Seniors. I was 52 years old, healthy, independent, mortgage-free. I looked down into my tea so they wouldn't see the smile tugging at the corner of my mouth. "Oh," I said calmly, "tell me how it works." That was all it took, that one sentence. Because once men like Derek believe you're compliant, once they think you've stopped resisting, they can't help themselves. They start explaining. And explaining is confession with better posture. He straightened in his seat, posture shifting instantly. This was familiar ground for him now. This was his arena. "Well," he began, "the first step is assessing the property's current market value. My company handles that internally," he added quickly. "Keeps the process efficient, of course it does." "And then," I asked, "then we sell directly to one of our investment partners," he continued smoothly. "No agents, no delays." "Less stress for you, and the money?" I asked, tilting my head. His smile widened. "That's the best part," he said. "We reinvest the proceeds into a managed portfolio that provides consistent monthly income." Sophia leaned forward eagerly. "See, Mom, passive income, passive like my role in my own future." "And where would I live?" I asked. Derek didn't hesitate. "A lovely condo community," he said. "Low maintenance, secure. Designed for people in your situation." my situation, an independent woman with a paid-off home and a quiet life. Yes, very inconvenient. And you manage everything? I asked. For a modest fee, he replied. My clients don't have to worry about the details. Clients, plural. How many people have you helped like this? I asked gently. For the first time, Derek hesitated. Several, he said. The pause before the word was louder than the word itself. Sophia didn't hear it. I did. That sounds wonderful, I said. I'd love to see examples, testimonials, documentation. Derek waved a hand dismissively. I'll have my assistant email you everything. Assistant. The man had barely survived breakfast, but I nodded. I'm impressed, I said sincerely. And that's when I saw it, that tiny shift in his eyes, the moment his internal calculation changed. The exact second he decided I wasn't an obstacle anymore, I was his next success story. What Derek didn't know was that while he was pitching the future, I was already dismantling his past. The moment Derek realized I was listening, not resisting, his posture changed. He straightened in his chair like someone stepping into a presentation he'd rehearsed 100 times, shoulders back, voice smoother. Confidence rebuilding itself piece by piece as he spoke. This was his comfort zone. Well, first, he said, folding his hands together, we assess the property's market value. We, already positioning himself as part of the decision. My company handles that internally, he continued. That way we avoid inflated numbers and unnecessary delays. I nodded slowly, encouraging. And who does the assessment? I asked. Our valuation team, he replied without blinking. Licensed professionals. Licensed where? By whom? He didn't say. He never needed to. That was the trick. Sound official. Keep it vague. And then, I prompted. Then we sell the property directly to one of our investment partners, he said. No realtors, no open houses, no stress. No competition, I added quietly. He smiled. Exactly. It protects you from volatility, protects you from choice, I thought. And the proceeds? I asked. Derek leaned forward slightly now, lowering his voice as if he were sharing insider knowledge. That's the beauty of the model, he said. We reinvest the funds into a managed portfolio designed to provide stable monthly income. Sophia perked up immediately. Passive income, she said brightly. You'd never have to worry again, Mom. Passive, as in. Hands off, eyes closed, trust us. And where would I live? I asked again, keeping my tone curious, not confrontational. Derek didn't miss a beat. We work with several condo communities, he explained. Secure buildings, gated. Maintenance included, designed specifically for people in your situation. There it was again, your situation. Code for isolated, asset-rich, emotionally vulnerable. And who owns the condo? I asked. He hesitated just for half a second. You would, he said, but the property would be managed by one of our affiliates to ensure everything runs smoothly. Affiliate, another foggy word, another layer. And the portfolio, I continued. Is it in my name? Of course, he said quickly. Fully compliant. Compliant with what exactly? And your role? I asked. Derek smiled again, comfortable now. I oversee the process, he said. Coordinate the sale, manage the reinvestment, ensure distributions are made on time. For a modest fee, I added. He chuckled lightly. Naturally, my clients prefer peace of mind. Clients, plural again. How many people have you helped this way? I asked. This time the pause was longer. Several, he said finally. No number, no examples, no names. Sophia didn't notice. She was already convinced. This makes so much sense, she said. I don't know why you're hesitating, Mom. I smiled at her. I'm not hesitating, I said. I'm just trying to understand. Derek nodded approvingly. Smart, questions are good. So, I continued, do you have testimonials? Case studies, something that shows how this has worked for others. He waved his hand again, dismissive. My assistant can send over a packet, he said. Most of my clients prefer discretion. Discretion, that's what predators call silence. And what happens if someone wants to exit the arrangement? I asked. Derek's smile tightened slightly. It's a long-term strategy, he said. Stability requires commitment. Translation, once you're in, you're stuck. Sophia leaned toward him. See, Mom, it's all taken care of. I looked back at Derek. And the risks? I asked. Every investment has them. Minimal, he said quickly. Diversification protects against volatility. He was speeding up now. Glossing over details, repeating buzzwords, the same language I'd seen in the article, the same phrasing victims described when they said they almost understood, but not quite. I nodded slowly. That all sounds very impressive, I said. I'd love to review everything carefully. Derek's eyes lit up. Of course, he said. I'll have my assistant email me. I finished for him. He smiled wider. That's when I saw it, that microscopic shift in his eyes. The exact moment he decided I was no longer a potential problem, I was a closed deal. What Derek didn't realize was that every word he'd just spoken matched a pattern I'd already seen before. And patterns are very hard to hide once someone knows where to look. That afternoon, I decided to move the board, not abruptly, not dramatically, carefully. We were sitting at the kitchen table, sunlight pouring in like nothing in the world was wrong. Derek had regained just enough color to look functional again, though the confidence hadn't returned. Sophia was flipping through her phone, half present, half relieved that the tension seemed to be easing. I stirred my tea slowly. I've been thinking, I said casually. This is a big decision. I should probably involve my financial advisor. The effect was immediate. Derek froze. Not visibly, not in a way Sophia would notice, but his body went still, like a machine that had just hit resistance. Your advisor? He asked. Yes, I said lightly. Harold Manning. He's managed my investments for years. Sophia looked up, confused. Since when do you have a financial advisor? Since my divorce, I replied calmly. I didn't advertise it. Derek recovered quickly, too quickly. Of course, he said, nodding. Independent verification is always wise. Wise but inconvenient. And my attorney, I added smoothly. Just to review any paperwork before we move forward. His jaw tightened. Absolutely, he said. Transparency is key. The words were right, the tone wasn't. I waited just long enough for him to believe the moment had passed. Then I smiled, and I invited Jennifer Walsh to join the conversation. Silence, not awkward silence, not polite silence, real silence, the kind that lands heavy and makes your ears ring. Derek's face drained of color so fast it was almost impressive. Jennifer Walsh, Sophia repeated slowly. Why does that name sound familiar? Derek stood up abruptly, chair scraping against the floor. That's unnecessary, he said sharply. She's my ex-wife, she's bitter. Oh, I don't think so, I replied evenly. She was very clear. Sophia's voice trembled. Clear about what? About her catering business, I said. The one she lost after trusting Derek with an investment opportunity. Derek snapped, voice rising. That's not what happened. Then explain Alina Patterson. The name hit him like a slap. His eyes widened. How do you know that name? He demanded. I leaned back in my chair, folding my hands calmly. Because Alina's house is in foreclosure, I said, and she's been waiting for monthly payments that never came. Sophia stood up so fast her chair tipped backward. Derek, she whispered, what is she talking about? Derek reached for his phone. I placed a thick folder on the table between us. Before you call anyone, I said quietly, you should know I filed a complaint with the state attorney general yesterday. His mask shattered. You did what? He shouted. I reported a pattern of elder fraud, I said calmly, with documentation. Sophia collapsed back into her chair, face pale. Mom, are you saying? I'm saying, I interrupted gently, that your husband targets women he thinks are vulnerable. Derek backed toward the door, eyes darting, mind racing. You have no proof, he said. This is circumstantial. I tapped the folder. Actually, I replied, I have plenty. The room felt smaller now, tighter, like the walls themselves were listening. That's when Derek turned and ran, not dramatically. Not bravely, he just ran. The front door slammed behind him, footsteps fading down the stairs. Sophia stared at the door for a long moment, then she looked at me, and for the first time since arriving, she saw me clearly. What Derek didn't understand was that running doesn't erase a pattern, it confirms it. The front door slammed so hard it shook the walls, not the dramatic kind of slam meant to make a point. This one was desperate, panicked, final, and just like that, Derek was gone, no speech, no apology. No attempt to explain himself. One moment, he was a financial expert with a plan for my future. The next, he was a man running from his own reflection. The silence he left behind was louder than the slam itself. Sophia sat frozen at my kitchen table, eyes locked on the folder like it might suddenly open and accuse her. Her hands were clenched so tightly in her lap her knuckles had gone white. I don't understand, she whispered. He never told me any of this. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't say I told you so, because this wasn't a victory. This was a reckoning. Sophia, I said gently, pulling out the chair across from her and sitting down. How fast did he push the marriage? She swallowed hard. 6 months, I nodded slowly. How fast did he want to meet me? Her eyes filled with tears. Immediately. And how fast did he start talking about my house? She didn't answer. She just covered her mouth as the realization finally settled in. That fast, I finished quietly. Her shoulders began to shake. But he loved me, she said, voice cracking. He said I was different. That I wasn't like the others. They all say that, I replied softly. That's how the door opens. She shook her head over and over like she could physically reject the truth. He made me feel safe, she whispered. Like someone finally had a plan. I reached across the table and placed my hand over hers. That's what predators sell first, I said. Certainty. Her phone buzzed. The sound was sharp in the silence. Derek. Sophia froze, staring at the screen like it was a live wire. She looked up at me, terrified. What do? I held her gaze. Answer it. Put it on speaker. Her thumb trembled as she accepted the call. Baby, Derek said immediately, his voice breathless and strained. Your mother is lying to you. She's paranoid. She's always been like this. Sophia's voice wavered. Then why did you run? A pause, longer than it should have been. I don't like being ambushed, he said finally. This wasn't fair. Why didn't you tell me about Alina Patterson? Sophia asked. Another pause, this one heavier. Sophia, Derek said slowly, you don't understand how business works. I leaned forward, my voice steady and clear. That's the problem, Derek. You thought none of us did. Silence. Then the call ended. No goodbye, no reassurance, just a dead line. Sophia stared at the phone for a moment, then dropped it onto the table like it burned. The illusion shattered all at once, not in anger, in grief. I brought him here, she whispered. I invited him into your life, into your home. Yes, I said honestly, you did, she flinched. But you also stopped him. Tears streamed down her face now. I almost handed him everything you worked for. I didn't argue because she was right, and sometimes accountability hurts, but it's also how healing starts. She wiped her face with the back of her hand. What happens now? I exhaled slowly. Now, I said, we let the consequences catch up to him. She looked at me, really looked at me for the first time since she'd arrived. Not as someone to manage, not as someone to control, but as someone who had seen this coming and survived worse. And that was the moment Sophia finally understood Derek didn't leave because he was innocent. He left because the game was over. The phone rang an hour later, not Sophia's. Mine. An unfamiliar number lit up the screen, no name, no preview, just a vibration that felt heavier than it should have. I answered calmly. Mrs. Whitmore, a composed female voice asked. This is Detective Sarah Chen with the California State Police Financial Crimes Division. Sophia's head snapped up so fast the chair scraped against the floor. Yes, I said evenly. I was expecting your call. The detective didn't sound surprised. That tells me a lot already, she replied. Your complaint triggered an internal review. I wanted to let you know we're familiar with Mr. Castellano. Sophia went pale. You mean? Her voice barely worked. He's done this before? There was a pause on the line, not hesitation, but care. Yes, Detective Chen said, multiple times. The word landed hard, multiple, not a mistake, not a misunderstanding. A pattern. Sophia sank back into her chair, one hand gripping the edge of the table like it was the only thing keeping her upright. The detective continued, her tone professional but not unkind. Mr. Castellano fits a profile we see often: rapid romantic involvement, financial urgency disguised as protection, pressure to isolate assets, and a tendency to insert himself between families and their support systems. Sophia whispered, he said he just wanted to help. They always do, the detective replied. That's part of the method. She explained that most of Derek's known victims were women over 60, widowed, divorced, or recently downsized. Women with property, savings, or businesses. Women who had worked their whole lives to build something. But occasionally, Detective Chen added, they miscalculate. I felt Sophia's eyes turn to me. Miscalculate? I'm 52, I said quietly. Yes, the detective replied. Which means you weren't his original target. Sophia's breath caught. You mean, she said slowly, dread creeping into her voice, he wasn't after me. There was a beat. He was after access, Detective Chen said gently. You were the access point. Sophia covered her face. I brought him here, she whispered. I walked him right into my mother's life. You were manipulated, the detective corrected calmly. There is a difference. And you also helped stop him. Sophia shook her head. I almost handed him my mother's entire future. That silence after her words was heavy because none of us disagreed. We'd like to come by today, Detective Chen continued. There are questions we need to ask, and we'd like to secure any documents or devices Mr. Castellano may have left behind. Yes, I said immediately, of course. After I hung up, the house felt different, smaller, more serious. Sophia looked at me like a child again, not demanding, not defensive, just scared. Mom, her voice broke. I'm so sorry. I studied her carefully. Not the woman who demanded breakfast at 5 in the morning. Not the one who spoke about my life like it was a logistics problem, but the girl who wanted to be chosen. The girl who believed love meant safety. Sorry doesn't fix this, I said honestly. But it's a start, she nodded, tears falling freely now. I don't know how I didn't see it. Because he didn't want you to, I said, and because you trusted him. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of it settling in. Then I added quietly, trust isn't a weakness. Refusing to look again would be. A knock sounded at the door, firm, controlled, professional. Sophia looked at me, fear flickering across her face. I stood up. Come on, I said. Let's hear the rest of the truth. Because what Detective Chen brought with her would change Sophia forever. Detective Sarah Chen arrived just after noon, not rushed, not dramatic. She carried herself with the quiet gravity of someone who already knew this situation was bigger than it looked from the outside. In one hand, a slim briefcase. In the other, a tablet tucked neatly under her arm. Her eyes scanned the house the moment she stepped inside, not with curiosity but with assessment. This is a beautiful property, she said neutrally. I nodded. That's why he wanted it. She didn't argue. We sat at the kitchen table. The same table where Derek had pitched his future like a product launch. Detective Chen opened her briefcase and began laying items out one by one, photographs, printed, organized, labeled, properties first. Homes that look familiar in the way all homes do, porches, windows, gardens, but then the details hit. Names, ages, dates, 12 women, some smiling in older photos, some looking tired, all real, Sophia's breath caught. Eleanor Patterson, Detective Chen said gently, sliding one photo forward. 73, lost her home after signing over power of attorney. Another photo. Jennifer Walsh, she continued. 48, former catering business owner. Sold her company to invest with her husband. Sophia's hands began to tremble. He told me Jennifer was unstable, she whispered, that she was obsessed with money. That's common, the detective replied. He discredits victims early. That way, if they ever speak up, no one listens. She slid another document forward, a timeline, clean, precise, devastating. Derek met Sophia 3 weeks after my property records were flagged in a real estate investment database. Sophia stared at the page like it was written in another language. You're saying, her voice broke, you're saying he didn't meet me by accident? No, Detective Chen said softly. You were the access point. The words landed like a collapse. Silence filled the room, thick, heavy, suffocating. Sophia's body folded inward as if she were trying to disappear. I was bait, she whispered. The detective shook her head gently. You were manipulated, there is a difference. Predators don't need willing accomplices, just trusting ones. Sophia covered her face and sobbed, the sound raw and unfiltered. I moved to her side, wrapping an arm around her shoulders, feeling the weight of years pressed down in that moment. Detective Chen waited, then she spoke again. There's something else, she said, something we didn't expect to find so quickly. She slid a final photo across the table, a small metallic device, rectangular, unassuming. A portable hard drive, she explained. It was hidden behind the air vent in the guest room. My stomach dropped. He hid evidence in my house? I asked. Yes, she said. Based on our preliminary scan, it contains transaction records, property transfers, and communication logs, potentially every victim. Sophia looked up, fear flooding her eyes. If he knows that's here, he may return for it, Detective Chen finished calmly. Predators don't abandon evidence that easily. The house felt different then. No longer violated, targeted. Sophia grabbed my hand. Mom, are you safe? I met her gaze, steady and certain. I'm not helpless, I said, and he just made the biggest mistake of his life. Detective Chen nodded. We'll have officers nearby. But understand this, when people like Mr. Castellano realize control has slipped through their fingers, they don't disappear. She stood, closing her briefcase. They come back. After she left, the ocean roared louder than usual, waves crashing against the shore like punctuation marks. Sophia sat quietly beside me. I thought love was supposed to feel like certainty, she said softly. Real love, I replied, doesn't rush, it doesn't isolate, and it never asks you to sacrifice someone else's safety. She nodded slowly. That night, as the sun dropped into the water and shadows stretched across the deck, I locked every door, turned on every light, and stood looking out at the horizon. Same ocean, same house, different rules. Because when predators realize they've been exposed, they don't disappear, they return desperate, reckless, and dangerous. The detective left just before sunset. Her car disappeared down the road, red and blue lights long gone, leaving behind something heavier than silence. Sophia and I stood on the deck for a long moment, watching the ocean do what it had done long before any of this, waves rolling forward without hesitation, without fear, without stopping for human chaos. The water didn't care, it never does. Sophia finally broke the quiet. I don't feel safe, she said, her voice small in a way I hadn't heard since she was a child. That's because your instincts finally woke up, I replied gently. And once they do, you can't put them back to sleep. She wrapped her arms around herself, staring out at the horizon like she was trying to outrun her own thoughts. We went back inside and moved with purpose, every door locked. Every window checked, outdoor lights switched on, alarm system armed. The house glowed from the outside now, bright, alert, awake. But inside me, nothing settled, because fear isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, calculated. The kind that sits deep in your chest and whispers truths you don't want to hear. Men like Derek don't disappear when they lose control. They don't walk away embarrassed and defeated. They escalate, especially when evidence exists. Especially when exposure threatens their freedom. Especially when their carefully constructed identity starts to crumble. And Derek's entire world was built on illusion. Around 9:30 p.m., Sophia's phone buzzed again. The screen lit up between us like a warning flare. Derek, Sophia's breath caught. She looked at me, eyes wide with fear. Don't answer, she whispered. Please. I shook my head slowly. Answer, I said. Put it on speaker. Her hand trembled as she tapped the screen. Baby, Derek said, his voice softer now, measured, careful, not the confident pitchman, not the fleeing suspect. This was the voice he used when he wanted something. I just want to talk, Sophia swallowed. You ran, she said. Why did you run? There was a pause just long enough to calculate. Because your mother ambushed me, he replied, with lies, with police threats. None of this was fair, I leaned forward, my voice steady. You hid evidence in my house, Derek. Silence, not defensive silence, not confused silence, guilty silence. It stretched long enough to answer every question I still had. Listen, he said finally, his tone shifting. I just need to pick up a few personal items, then I'll disappear. You'll never hear from me again. I almost smiled. Men who say you'll never hear from me again always come back louder. No, Sophia said, her voice shaking but firm. You're not coming back here. There was a sharp edge now when Derek spoke. You don't get to decide that, he snapped. That house isn't just hers, you're my wife. That's when I stepped in. You step foot on my property, I said calmly, and the police will be waiting. Another pause, then Derek laughed, not amused laughter, mocking laughter. You think you're in control, he said. You're not. The call ended, no goodbye. No negotiation, just a click. Sophia stared at the phone like it had betrayed her. Mom, she whispered. What does that mean? I didn't sugarcoat it. It means, I said slowly, he's not finished. She began to shake then, not dramatically, not loudly, just the quiet tremor of someone realizing the danger isn't theoretical anymore. Men like Derek don't come back to apologize. They don't come back to negotiate. They come back to reclaim what they believe was taken from them. And this time, it wouldn't be about charm. It wouldn't be about persuasion. It would be about control. I walked through the house one more time, checking locks again, even though I already had. Old instincts, survival instincts, the kind that don't trust reassurances. The ocean roared louder that night. The wind picked up, and somewhere deep in my gut, the truth settled fully into place. Derek wasn't done with this house, and he wasn't done with me, because when men like him come back, it's never to talk. The black sedan rolled into my driveway just after sunrise. No sirens, no urgency, just quiet authority. Government plates caught the light as the car stopped, and two figures stepped out measured, alert, already scanning the property like they were reading a map no one else could see. Agent Martinez, Agent Kim, Federal Bureau of Investigation. Sophia stiffened beside me. This is real, she whispered. It's been real, I replied. We just caught up. They didn't waste time. Agent Martinez spoke first, voice calm, direct. Mrs. Whitmore, we believe Derek Castellano will attempt to retrieve the hard drive. Soon, Agent Kim added. Likely within 48 hours. Sophia crossed her arms tightly, fear hardening into anger. Then arrest him. Agent Kim shook her head. If we arrest him without the evidence, the structure survives. Structure, not scheme, not crime. Structure, that hard drive isn't just records, Agent Martinez continued. It's the connective tissue, financial transfers, property conversions, names, locations. My stomach tightened. And without it, I asked. Without it, he said, Derek becomes replaceable. Sophia frowned. Replaceable by who? Agent Kim didn't hesitate. The network. That single word drained the air from the room. This isn't just Derek, Agent Martinez said. He's part of a coordinated operation targeting women with high-value property and limited oversight. They embed through relationships, marriage, caretaking narratives. Sophia shook her head slowly. You're saying he was never alone? No, Agent Kim replied. He was a node. I looked toward the ocean through the window, waves crashing harder than usual. And you think he'll come back here? Agent Kim met my eyes. He already has, Sophia spun around. What? He's been nearby, Agent Martinez explained. Cell tower pings, surveillance cameras in the area, he just doesn't know we're watching. They laid out the plan, simple on paper. Dangerous in reality, use my house as bait. Let Derek believe he still had access. Let him return for the hard drive. Capture him on federal charges, evidence recovery, witness intimidation, interstate fraud. Sophia stood up abruptly. You want my mother to risk her life? Agent Kim's voice didn't waver. Derek is already a risk. This gives us control. I felt Sophia turn toward me, panic sharp in her eyes. Mom, don't. I will, I said calmly. She froze. What? I'm not running from my own house, I continued, and I'm not letting him hurt anyone else. Agent Martinez nodded once. We'll minimize risk. They fitted me with a discreet wire beneath my clothing. A small panic button nestled against my palm. If anything feels wrong, Agent Kim said, you press this. We move immediately. Cameras were placed throughout the house, tiny, invisible, watching everything Derek thought was hidden. Agents stationed nearby, unmarked vehicles, a perimeter. On paper, it looked airtight. But as they finished setting up, a quiet certainty settled in my chest. Derek wasn't coming back for the hard drive, not really. Evidence mattered to him, but power mattered more, control. And control had slipped through his fingers the moment he ran. I walked Agent Kim to the door. What happens if he doesn't take the bait? I asked. She paused. Men like him always do. I nodded, but I didn't share what I knew. Because Derek wasn't returning to retrieve data. He was returning to restore dominance, to prove something to himself, to me. And when predators feel cornered, they stop thinking about escape and start thinking about elimination. I will never forget the time, 2:47 am, not because I looked at the clock, but because fear has a way of burning moments into you with surgical precision. I was upstairs, lying perfectly still in my bed, breathing slow, eyes closed, pretending to sleep. The house was quiet in that deceptive way it gets after midnight, not peaceful, just waiting. The ocean outside was restless, waves crashing harder than earlier, wind rattling the palms like nervous fingers tapping glass. Then I heard it. Keys, metal scraping metal, careful, deliberate, confident, not forced, not rushed, someone unlocking my front door like they had every right to be there. My heart slammed against my ribs, but my body stayed still. Years of motherhood, survival, and instinct kicked in all at once. Panic wastes energy, stillness gathers information. In my ear, Agent Kim's voice whispered, barely audible, "He's inside." My mouth went dry. I swallowed once, then spoke softly, keeping my voice steady. "Derek," I called down the staircase like I'd just woken up confused. Footsteps answered, slow, unhurried, the sound of someone who wasn't afraid of being caught. "Patricia," his voice floated up, calm and almost warm. "I'm glad you're awake." I slipped out of bed, wrapped my robe tightly around me, and began walking down the stairs. Every step felt louder than it should have. The wire beneath my clothes pressed against my skin, a reminder that I wasn't alone, even though it felt like I was. He stood in my living room when I reached the bottom. No smile, no charm, no rehearsed warmth. Just cold, focused eyes. "You shouldn't have done this," he said quietly. "Done what?" I asked, stopping a few feet away. "Made this personal." The air felt heavy, pressurized. Like the house itself knew something terrible had crossed the threshold. That's when I saw it. A gun tucked into the waistband of his jeans. Casual, intentional. My blood turned to ice. "You really thought this was about money?" he continued, shaking his head slightly. "That's what you never understood." I forced myself to breathe. "Then why are you here?" I asked. He took a step closer. "Because you're the problem," he said flatly. "You don't comply, you don't scare easily, and you don't disappear quietly." I felt the weight of every woman before me in that moment, Alina, Jennifer, the others whose lives had been dismantled before they ever realized they were in danger. "You came back to threaten me?" I said. He laughed once, short, sharp. "No," he replied. "I came back to erase you." My thumb pressed the panic button. Nothing happened, no lights, no movement, no sound. Instead, the lights went out. Every single one. The house dropped into complete darkness. Sophia screamed upstairs. Derek laughed again, louder this time. "Did you really think you were smarter than me?" he said. "You invited wolves into your house and thought you were the hunter." In my ear, static, then silence. The system was down, the cameras, the lights, the illusion of safety, all gone. He stepped closer again, his outline barely visible in the dark. "You know what your mistake was?" he asked calmly. "You assumed I wanted the hard drive." I didn't answer. "I already made copies," he continued. "I came back for closure." A shape moved behind him, fast, then federal agent. "Drop the weapon." A body slammed into Derek from the side, the sound of furniture crashing. A gun clattered across the floor, shouting commands, chaos. Sophia screamed again. I dropped to the floor instinctively, hands over my head as flashlights burst through the darkness like lightning. "Don't move, hands where I can see them," Derek fought. Of course he did. Men like him always believe they can still win, even when they're already buried. It took 3 agents to restrain him. His voice changed then, no longer controlled, no longer cold, panicked, furious. "You think this is over?" he shouted as they cuffed him. "You don't know who you're dealing with." Agent Kim knelt beside me. "You're safe," she said firmly. Safe, the word didn't feel real yet. They dragged Derek past me, his face twisted with rage and disbelief. For a brief second, our eyes met, and in that moment I saw it. Not power, not control, fear. The lights flickered back on. Sophia ran down the stairs and collapsed into my arms, sobbing. "I thought I lost you," she cried. I held her tightly, feeling my knees finally give way. "You didn't," I whispered. "He doesn't get to take us." Outside, red and blue lights painted the ocean in violent color. Derek was shoved into the back of a vehicle, still shouting, still threatening. But it was over, or so I thought. Because as the car door slammed shut, I realized something chilling. Derek wasn't the end of the story. He was just the first name we caught. The house went completely black, not dim, not flickering, dead, no lamps, no hallway lights, no glow bleeding in from the ocean beyond the windows, nothing, just darkness, and the sound of Derek's breathing, fast, sharp, uneven. The confident tone he'd worn moments earlier, the rehearsed dominance, the threats disguised as certainty collapsed instantly. "What did you do?" he snapped. I didn't answer, because fear talks, and I wanted him talking. "You think turning off the lights scares me?" he said, louder now, voice echoing awkwardly through the room. "I've planned worse than this." But his body betrayed him. I could hear it in the way his footsteps shifted, slower now, careful. One foot testing the floor before committing weight. His arms moved slightly outward, feeling for space, for walls, for control. That's when I knew. Derek wasn't brave, he was performative. Men like him thrive on visibility, on being seen, admired, feared. Take that away, and all that's left is instinct. And his instincts were sloppy. Men like Derek rely on intimidation. They rely on posture. They rely on other people freezing first. Remove visibility and they unravel. "Patricia," he said, forcing his voice lower, calmer, like he was dialing back into control. "This doesn't have to end badly." It always amazes me how predators say that after they pull a weapon. Funny how responsibility suddenly matters once they realize they're not winning. I told you, I replied evenly, my voice steady in the dark. You underestimated me. He laughed, but the sound fractured halfway through. Not amusement, not confidence, panic trying to disguise itself. You're a middle-aged woman living alone, he said. You really think you outsmarted me? I smiled. He couldn't see it, but he felt it. Exactly, I said, which means I learned to plan. Silence fell again, thick, waiting, then click. The sound was sharp and unmistakable. Derek pulled the trigger. Nothing, he froze, pulled it again, click, nothing. What the, he muttered, voice pitching upward now. He shook the gun once too many. His breathing accelerated, no longer controlled, no longer measured. Panic, pure, unfiltered panic, because the gun wasn't broken, it was disabled, and he had no idea how. His grip tightened, his steps staggered. I could hear his heart now, loud in his chest, racing ahead of his thoughts. You did something, he whispered. I said nothing, because the moment a predator realizes he's no longer the most dangerous thing in the room, the power shifts. Completely, he backed up slightly, bumping into furniture. The illusion shattered. No plan, no dominance, no leverage, just a man in the dark holding something that no longer worked. And for the first time since he'd walked into my house uninvited, Derek was afraid. That was the moment control finally changed hands. Federal agents, drop the weapon, the voice didn't shout, it commanded. It cut through the darkness like a blade, sharp and absolute, carrying something Derek had never truly faced before, authority that didn't need permission. Derek spun toward the sound, arms swinging wildly, the useless gun clenched tight in his hand. For a split second, I saw it clearly. Not anger, not confidence, panic, real panic, the kind that hits when performance ends and reality steps in. At the top of the staircase, a silhouette appeared, Agent Kim, still balanced. Weapon drawn but not shaking. Hands where I can see them, she said. Now, Derek laughed, but it wasn't laughter anymore. It was high, thin, fractured. You think I won't use her as leverage? He snapped, voice cracking under its own weight. You think I won't? He lunged toward me. Big mistake, because in that exact moment, the lights snapped back on. Every single one, bright, blinding, unforgiving. The sudden light hit Derek like a physical blow. He froze mid-step, pupils blown wide, body caught between fight and flight with nowhere to go. That's when he saw it. Agent Martinez was already behind him. Gun drawn, feet planted, expression unreadable. On the ground, Agent Martinez said calmly. Now, not yelled, not threatened, stated. Derek's head snapped back and forth between them, mind racing, trying to find an angle, any angle that still left him in control. He hesitated. That half second told me everything. Then he bolted. 2 steps, that's all he got. Agent Martinez moved fast, faster than Derek expected. One clean tackle, hard and precise, slamming Derek into the floor with a force that knocked the air from his lungs. The gun flew from Derek's hand, skidding uselessly across the hardwood. Agent Kim was on him instantly. Cuffs snapped shut, metal on skin. Final, Derek screamed, not in pain, in rage. You set me up, he shouted, thrashing uselessly against the floor. You planned this. I walked closer, slow and deliberate, until I stood where he could see me clearly. Yes, I said, I did. His eyes locked onto mine. And for the first time since the moment he arrived in my house with suitcases and entitlement, there was no calculation behind them, no strategy, no script, just fear, raw and undeniable. Because predators fear exposure more than prison. Prison is contained, exposure spreads. You think this makes you powerful? He spat. You think this ends me? Agent Martinez tightened his grip. It ends tonight, Derek struggled again, weaker now, breath ragged, sweat pouring down his face. All performance gone, all illusion stripped. This wasn't a mastermind. This was a man who had finally run out of rooms to hide in. As they pulled him to his feet, his body sagged, not from defeat but from realization. The act was over, the audience had seen everything, and there was no applause coming. Because when real authority enters the room, false power collapses instantly. As they hauled Derek to his feet, something changed in him. The rage burned out, the shouting stopped. The man who had just threatened my life, who had walked into my home armed and certain, went eerily still. Agent Kim glanced toward the hallway, then toward the guest room. We found it, she said calmly, 2 words. And Derek's body reacted before his mind could. No, he whispered. The words slipped out of him involuntarily, raw and stripped of bravado. Agent Martinez tightened his grip. You want to try that again? Derek shook his head slowly, eyes locked somewhere far away now, calculating losses instead of angles. You don't understand, Derek said hoarsely. That drive, it's not just files. Oh, we understand, Agent Kim replied, and so will a federal judge. They led him down the hallway toward the front door. As they passed the guest room, I caught a glimpse of it, the hard drive. Small, unremarkable, hidden behind a decorative plant, exactly where Detective Chen said it would be, something that looked so harmless, yet carried the wreckage of dozens of lives. Derek stopped walking. For the first time since he'd been tackled, cuffed, and exposed, he resisted, not physically but emotionally. He turned his head just enough to look at me. "This isn't over," he said quietly. "You don't know how deep this goes." I met his stare without flinching. "Yes," I said calmly, "I do." He searched my face for something: fear, doubt, regret. He found none, and in that moment whatever hope he had left died. They walked him out the front door in handcuffs. Red and blue lights splashed violently across the walls, turning my home into something unrecognizable, part sanctuary, part crime scene. Neighbors would talk later, but I didn't care. Sophia came running down the stairs then, barefoot, hair wild, eyes wide with terror that hadn't yet caught up to relief. "Mom," she cried. She threw her arms around me, sobbing hard, gripping my robe like she was afraid I might disappear. "He was going to kill you," she whispered into my shoulder. "Yes," I said, holding her tightly, "and now he won't." Outside, Derek was shoved into the back of a black vehicle. He didn't fight anymore, didn't shout, didn't threaten. The doors slammed shut, and for the first time since he arrived in my life, he was contained. Agent Martinez returned inside once the vehicles began pulling away. "Mrs. Whitmore," he said, voice respectful now, "you just helped dismantle a major player in a multi-state financial fraud operation." I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. "But this doesn't end here," I said quietly. He shook his head. "No, it opens something much bigger." I nodded. I already knew. After they left, after the lights faded, after the house settled back into itself, I stepped onto the deck once more. The ocean was still there, unbothered, endless. The same water I'd watched on the morning my peace was interrupted. Same house, same waves, but I wasn't the same woman. I had learned something predators never expect their targets to learn. That fear doesn't make you weak. Ignoring it does. Sophia joined me, standing quietly at my side. "I thought being strong meant being agreeable," she said softly. "I thought love meant compromise." "Real strength," I replied, "is knowing when compromise becomes surrender." She nodded slowly. And together we watched the ocean move forward, steady, relentless, unstoppable. Because when you survive something like this, you don't go back to being quiet. You go forward alert, unafraid, and armed with the truth. The house felt different once the sirens faded. Not safer, not calmer, just empty. The kind of quiet that isn't peaceful, it's hollow. Like the walls themselves were holding their breath, waiting to understand what had just passed through them. Sophia and I sat on opposite ends of the couch at first, wrapped in blankets like survivors pulled from wreckage. The lights were on, every single one, but neither of us seemed to trust the dark yet. Outside, the ocean kept moving, indifferent as always, but inside the house time felt suspended. Eventually, she shifted closer, not consciously, not deliberately, just instinct. "I really thought he loved me," she said quietly. No drama, no defensiveness, just a statement stripped of pride. I didn't rush to answer, because grief needs space before it needs words. "That's how they get close," I said gently. "They don't arrive loud, they don't announce danger. They come in warm." She stared down at the floor, eyes unfocused. "He knew exactly what to say," she whispered. "When to say it, when to pull back, when to lean in." Her voice cracked. "He made me feel chosen." I nodded slowly. "That wasn't an accident," I said. "That was strategy." She flinched, not because it wasn't true, but because it was. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The house creaked softly, settling after the chaos, like it was trying to return to a shape it recognized. But we both knew something fundamental had changed. The FBI returned the next morning. More agents, more boxes, more questions. They moved through my home with professional detachment, photographing corners I'd never looked at twice, bagging items that had felt ordinary just days ago. My house wasn't just a home anymore, it was evidence. Sophia hovered near me as Agent Kim pulled me aside, lowering her voice. "You understand what you stepped into, right?" she asked carefully. I didn't answer right away. She continued anyway. "Derek isn't just a con artist, he's part of something organized, very organized." Sophia overheard that part, her head snapped up. "What does that mean?" Agent Kim didn't sugarcoat it. "It means Derek didn't invent this," she said. "He executed it." I felt my chest tighten, the implications settling heavy in my lungs. "You're saying there are more of them," I said quietly. Agent Kim nodded once, firm, certain. "Dozens, possibly more." Sophia's face drained of color. "So even if he's gone," she began. "This doesn't stop," Agent Kim finished. "Not automatically." That was the moment it truly hit me. Derek wasn't the danger. He was the symptom, a visible manifestation of something much larger, something methodical, patient, and deeply embedded. Predators like him don't exist in isolation. They operate inside systems. They share playbooks. They refine methods. And those methods don't disappear just because one man gets caught. Sophia sank back onto the couch, wrapping the blanket tighter around herself like it could hold her together. "I thought it was just him," she said. "I thought once he was gone, everything would go back to normal." I sat beside her, close enough that our shoulders touched. "There is no normal after this," I said softly. "There's only awareness." She swallowed. "And once you have that, you can't unsee it," I finished. Outside, the ocean rolled forward again, waves breaking with mechanical certainty. The world hadn't paused for our fear, it never does. But inside that quiet house, with agents walking through rooms that had once held laughter and routine, one truth became undeniable. This wasn't over. It was just expanding. Because symptoms don't stop unless the disease is treated. Agent Kim opened her laptop at my kitchen table. The same table where Derek had once leaned forward, confident, convincing, outlining a future he never intended for me to keep. Now it held something else entirely. Mrs. Whitmore, she said carefully, fingers hovering over the trackpad, there's something we found on the hard drive that you need to see. Sophia straightened beside me. I felt it before I saw it, that tightening in the chest, the instinct that warns you something irreversible is coming. Agent Kim turned the screen toward us. A folder, plain, unremarkable, labeled in stark black text, PATRICAWHITMORE, target profile. For a second, my mind refused to process it. Target, profile, together. Sophia leaned forward slowly. That's your name. Agent Kim nodded once. Yes, she clicked. The folder opened. What followed wasn't dramatic, it was worse. Property value estimates updated quarterly. Drone-style photos of my house from angles I didn't recognize. Notes on peak privacy hours. Daily routines mapped into timelines. When I walked the beach. When I painted. When I sat alone on the deck at sunrise. My throat went dry. Sophia covered her mouth. They'd been watching you, she whispered. For over a year, Agent Kim confirmed calmly. Your property was flagged long before Derek met either of you. Sophia's knees buckled as she sank into the chair. So he didn't just fall in love with me, she said weakly. I stared at the screen, eyes scanning faster now, heart pounding harder with every line. No, I said quietly. He applied for you. That was the moment it broke her. Not the betrayal, not the arrest. The realization that her relationship, every conversation, every promise, every late-night reassurance had been an interview. She cried like someone mourning a death, not Derek. The version of herself who believed it had been real. Agent Kim let the silence sit before continuing. There's more, she said. She scrolled. Psychological assessments, strengths, independent, empathetic, conflict avoidant, vulnerabilities. Recent divorce, adult child seeking validation, isolated location. Triggers, responsibility, guilt, legacy. I felt exposed in a way I'd never known before. They reduced you to data, Sophia said through tears. Yes, Agent Kim replied, and they're very good at it. She closed that folder and opened another. A list, names, addresses, photos. At least 30 active targets, she said. Women who don't yet know they're being studied, some widowed. Some divorced, some simply alone. 30 homes like mine. 30 lives moving forward without knowing they were already being planned around. And you stopped him, Agent Kim said, turning to look directly at me now. Which makes you valuable, that word again. But this time it didn't feel like a threat, it felt like a responsibility. Valuable how? I asked. You disrupted a live operation, she said. You exposed methodology. You survived the escalation. People like you are rare. Sophia looked at me, eyes red but focused now. They won't just forget you, she said. No, Agent Kim agreed. But neither will we. I closed my eyes for a moment, inhaling deeply. This wasn't just something that happened to me. It was something I had walked into the middle of, something unfinished. When I opened my eyes again, the fear was still there, but it had changed shape. It wasn't paralyzing anymore. It was clarifying, because I finally understood why this happened to me, not because I was weak, not because I was unlucky, but because someone like Derek never expects the target to wake up and fight back. That night, Sophia and I sat on the deck as the sun sank into the ocean. The sky burned orange, then softened into pink, then faded into that deep blue that always feels like a held breath. The waves rolled in slow and steady, like nothing in the world had shifted, even though everything had. We didn't talk at first, we just watched. Eventually, Sophia broke the silence. I don't trust myself anymore, she said quietly. How did I not see it? Her voice wasn't angry, it was scared. I turned toward her. You saw what you wanted to see, I said gently. That doesn't make you stupid, it makes you human. She nodded, swallowing hard. He knew how to sound reasonable, she said. Every red flag felt explainable. That's the trick, I replied. They don't rush you into fear, they ease you into comfort. She stared out at the horizon for a long moment. Mom, she said finally, what are you going to do now? The question lingered between us, heavier than it sounded, because it wasn't really about me. It was about whether this story ended in survival or meaning. I thought about Alina. Jennifer, the other names I'd seen in those files, women who never knew the moment their lives quietly changed direction. I'm not going back to pretending this didn't happen, I said at last. Sophia turned toward me. What does that mean? It means, I said slowly, choosing each word carefully, that if men like Derek think women like me are easy targets, then women like me need to become their worst nightmare. She didn't smile. She didn't cheer, she just breathed out long and shaky, like something inside her finally made sense. The next morning, my phone rang early. Agent Kim, we'd like you to consult, she said. Help us identify patterns. Help us understand how these men choose their targets. Help us warn other women. I didn't hesitate. Yes, I said. Sophia looked up from the table. You're really doing this? Yes, I replied. And you're coming with me, she blinked. Me, you know how they talk, I said. How they charm, how they justify, how they make control sound like care. She looked down at her hands. I was good at believing him, she whispered. Then you'll be good at helping others see it, I said. She thought about that for a long moment. Then she nodded. Maybe, she said quietly, maybe I can stop someone else from making my mistake. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. That's how this ends, I said, not with fear, with purpose. Later that evening, I stood alone on the deck again. Same house, same ocean, but everything felt sharper now, clearer. I wasn't naive anymore. I wasn't invisible. And I wasn't quiet, because surviving something like this doesn't return you to who you were before. It forges you into someone new, someone alert, someone deliberate, someone unwilling to be used. The story wasn't over. It was just changing direction. And this time, I was walking toward it with my eyes wide open. 6 months changed everything. Not in the dramatic, movie montage way people expect, but in the quiet, relentless way real life does when it refuses to let you go back to who you were. I wasn't waking up to ocean waves anymore. I was waking up to briefings, case files spread across hotel desks, burner phones vibrating before sunrise, secure emails. Women's voices on the other end of the line, hesitant at first, then shaking, then breaking. Women who sounded exactly like Alina once did, scared, confused, ashamed. Women who kept repeating the same sentences, almost word for word, like they'd been handed a script. I didn't want to seem rude. He sounded so reasonable. I thought he was helping me. That's how predators win, not with force, not with violence, with politeness and pressure, with urgency disguised as concern, with charm that never raises its voice. Sophia sat across from me now in a small coffee shop in Portland, steam rising from our mugs, rain tapping softly against the windows. She looked different these days, straighter posture, steadier eyes. The kind of confidence that doesn't announce itself. My earpiece buzzed. Agent Chen, Patricia, she said quietly, subject is making his pitch. I didn't look up yet. Across the table from us sat Carol Peterson, 58 years old. Widow, owner of a bed and breakfast worth just over $1 million, recently overwhelmed, recently isolated, recently targeted, and across from her Marcus Webb, Derek's former partner, different name, same smile, same posture. Same script. Marcus leaned forward just enough to seem invested, not aggressive. You shouldn't have to handle all this alone, Carol, he said gently. That's why people like me exist. I'd heard that line before. Sophia's jaw tightened, but she stayed still. I closed my book slowly and stood up. Excuse me, I said pleasantly, my voice warm, almost apologetic. Aren't you Carol Peterson? From the grief support group on Hawthorne? Carol blinked, confused. I don't think so. Oh, I said with a small laugh. I must be mistaken. You just look exactly like a woman I met recently who almost lost her home to a very charming man offering investment help. Marcus's smile tightened. Ma'am, he said smoothly, this is a private meeting. Oh, of course, I replied. I just wanted to say something quickly. These scams tend to target widows with property. It happened to a woman named Alina Patterson. Marcus froze. Not visibly, just enough. I leaned in slightly, lowering my voice. And Derek Castellano, the color drained from his face. In that exact moment, Agent Chen stepped up behind him. FBI, she said calmly. Mr. Webb, you're under arrest. The cafe went silent. Carol stared down at the documents in front of her, pages she'd been seconds away from signing. I was going to sign these, she whispered. Yes, I said softly. And now you're not. Her hands started shaking. Sophia reached across the table and held them. Marcus was led away, his performance finally over. Outside, rain kept falling. Inside, something irreversible had just been interrupted. One pitch stopped, one woman spared. One future returned. That's one life saved, just like that, and that was only the beginning. Marcus Webb wasn't the end, he was the fracture. The kind you don't notice at first, just a thin line in the surface, until pressure builds and everything behind it starts to pour through. Once Marcus realized he was cornered, the performance evaporated. No charm. No clever explanations, no confidence, just fear and self-preservation. And men like him always choose themselves. He talked, not heroically, not regretfully, strategically. He gave names first, people he thought the FBI already knew, then accounts, then shell companies layered so deeply they'd been designed to confuse anyone who wasn't looking very hard. What he didn't expect was how long they had been looking. Derek's network wasn't brilliant, it was methodical. They didn't hunt randomly, they didn't rely on luck. They relied on repetition, scripts refined over years, patterns tested and retested until they produced predictable outcomes. They targeted women who trusted themselves last, women who were competent, capable, and exhausted. women who had survived marriages, illnesses, grief, and were proud of standing on their own. That pride was the entry point. Because predators don't attack weakness, they exploit responsibility. Once Marcus flipped, the dam broke. Emails cross-referenced with financial records, call logs matched to travel itineraries, dating app accounts tied to LLC registrations. Each piece alone looked harmless. Together, they told a story. Within weeks, arrests began stacking quietly, no headlines at first, just sealed indictments and early morning knocks on doors in cities far from Malibu. Phoenix, Boise, Savannah, Santa Fe, men who had built lives out of proximity to women's assets, now watching those lives evaporate in real time. Within 4 months, 14 arrests, $2.3 million recovered. 37 women protected, 0 funerals. That last number mattered most, because the deeper investigators went, the clearer it became. Derek's escalation wasn't unusual, it was inevitable. When financial predators feel exposure coming, violence isn't a deviation, it's a phase. And stopping that phase saved lives no spreadsheet could fully account for. Derek never took the stand. He didn't charm the courtroom, didn't posture. Didn't perform, no silk robe, no morning routine, no control, just steel benches and silence. 20 years in federal prison, no parole. When the sentence was read, he didn't look at me. He stared straight ahead like a man trying not to imagine the rest of his life. Sophia testified 2 days later. She was nervous at first, hands shaking, voice tight, but something shifted halfway through. The words stopped sticking in her throat. I thought love meant being chosen, she said clearly. I thought compromise meant maturity. The courtroom went still. But real love doesn't ask you to give up your power, she continued. And it doesn't isolate you from the people who protect you. I watched from the back row, hands folded, heart steady. My daughter wasn't the girl who needed saving anymore. She was a witness, a warning, a voice. When she stepped down, she didn't look back. She didn't need to. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited, but we walked past them. This story was never about spectacle. It was about interruption. Stopping one pattern before it reached the next woman. Breaking one script before it became someone else's normal. Marcus Webb pled out, so did 3 others. The rest fought and lost. The network didn't collapse all at once. It unraveled. Slowly, publicly, permanently, and in the quiet that followed, something unexpected happened. Women started calling, not victims yet, women who had felt something off, who had paused before signing, who had walked away and never known why. Until now, because once a pattern is exposed, it can't hide again. I'm back in Malibu now, same house, same ocean, different woman. Most mornings, I wake before the sun crests the horizon. I step onto the deck barefoot, feel the cool wood under my feet, and listen to the waves do what they've always done, move forward without asking permission. I make my coffee exactly how I like it. Strong, no sugar, no compromises. No one standing behind me with expectations disguised as entitlement. Sometimes I laugh when I think about that breakfast. 5 in the morning, Eggs Benedict, a man who thought my kindness meant weakness. He mistook calm for compliance. He mistook politeness for permission. He mistook age for fragility. That mistake cost him everything. Here's the truth nobody tells women like me. We're not vulnerable because we're alone. We're vulnerable when we stop trusting ourselves. Predators don't look for ignorance. They look for hesitation. They look for the moment you silence that quiet voice inside you, the one that says something's not right because you don't want to seem rude, dramatic, ungrateful, or difficult. They rely on the fact that women are taught to smooth things over, to doubt ourselves first. Derek thought he was smarter. He thought experience made me slow. He thought silence meant submission. He thought age made me soft. What he never understood is this: experience doesn't dull you, it sharpens you. It teaches you patterns, it teaches you timing, it teaches you when to smile and when to stop smiling. I used to think strength looked like independence. Like not needing anyone, like handling everything quietly. Now I know better. Real strength looks like listening to yourself. It looks like pausing when something feels rushed. It looks like asking questions when someone discourages them. It looks like refusing to trade your peace for someone else's urgency. So if you're watching this right now and something in your life feels off, a relationship that moved too fast, an offer that sounds generous but demands secrecy, a person who frames control as care, listen to that feeling. That feeling is not paranoia. It's pattern recognition. It's your nervous system saying, pay attention. Mine saved my life, and it saved dozens of others. Sophia sits with me on the deck sometimes now. We don't talk much about Derek anymore. We don't need to. She's different too, stronger, clearer, not because she stopped trusting, but because she learned where trust belongs. We talk instead about the women who called us, the ones who walked away just in time, the ones who didn't and now know they weren't stupid or weak. They were targeted, and awareness is contagious. That's the part predators never plan for. Because once women start comparing notes, once we stop carrying shame for someone else's manipulation, once we trust our instincts louder than someone else's charm, the game ends. Quietly, permanently. So if there's one thing I hope you take from this story, it's this. You don't owe politeness to anyone who makes you feel small. You don't owe access to anyone who rushes your boundaries. And you don't owe silence to anyone who benefits from it. Trust yourself. That's not fear talking, that's wisdom. And wisdom, once awakened, is very hard to disarm.